that Thomas Seymour sexually abused the teenage Princess Elizabeth. Evidence shows that Thomas Seymour asked a 13-year-old Princess Elizabeth to marry him, months before his eventual marriage to Katherine Parr, Henry VIII's widow. Elizabeth I may have been one of England's longest reigning monarchs. From her very first breath to the day she died, Elizabeth was surrounded by enemies who threatened her crown and her life. In the first episode, we examined the allegation that the teenage Princess Elizabeth was sexually abused by Thomas Seymour after Henry VIII's death in January 1547. Seymour was the brother of one of her stepmothers, Jane Seymour, and the husband of another, Katherine Parr. So what's the evidence, and did it happen? Nearly everything we know about this case comes from Elizabeth's servants. Her governess, Kat Ashley, and Thomas Parry, her cofferer or accountant, testified in response to a Privy Council investigation in 1549 into whether Seymour tried to marry Elizabeth without the council's consent. Here are the facts as best we know them. Thomas Seymour asked a 13-year-old Princess Elizabeth to marry him by letter in February 1547, within a month of her father, Henry VIII's death. Seymour probably believed that marrying Elizabeth would increase his hold on power. His brother, Edward Seymour, Duke of Somerset, had just been made Lord Protector, and the ambitious Thomas was probably envious of Edward's position. Elizabeth rejected his proposal elegantly, also by letter, saying she was too young. She was 13 years old. He, at 38, was 25 years older than she, and would be in mourning for her father for 2 years. Within a month or so of receiving her rejection, Thomas Seymour married the Queen Dowager Katherine Parr, Henry VIII's widow and Elizabeth's stepmother. Katherine had been in love with him since before her marriage to Henry, but it is possible that Thomas married her to get closer to Elizabeth. At almost exactly this time, Elizabeth started living with Katherine. Soon afterwards, Thomas moved in to live with his new wife, according to testimonies given in 1549 by Elizabeth's governess and companion, Kat Ashley, and her cofferer Thomas Parry. From June 1547, within days of Seymour's arrival, Elizabeth started to receive early morning visits from him. He would make as though he would come at her, and she would shrink back. The next day, she rose earlier so that he wouldn't find her in bed, but when he arrived, she was still dressed only in a nightdress, he in a short nightgown, bare-legged in his slippers. He greeted her and reached out to strike her on the back or the buttocks familiarly. Another time he climbed into Elizabeth's bed while she was still in it. She continued to get up earlier. If she were dressed, he would bid her good morning and then go on his way. Kat Ashley, in her depositions, said that she grew concerned about his visits, and came to sit in her mistress's rooms in the early mornings, but that Seymour continued his behavior. She maintained that she told him to go away for shame, and squared up to him on one occasion, saying that word of his behavior was getting out. Seymour replied that he meant no evil. On 2 occasions, Katherine Parr joined Seymour in his morning visits to the now 14-year-old girl, and they tickled her in bed. On another occasion, Seymour wrestled with Elizabeth in the gardens at Hanworth on an autumnal day, with Katherine nearby. He cut Elizabeth's gown into 100 pieces while Katherine held her. The nature of Katherine's holding is not clear. Held her down? Held her to protect her? Laughingly participated in mere horseplay? We don't know how Elizabeth reacted. Soon after this incident, Katherine asked Kat Ashley to keep watch on Elizabeth's behavior. She claimed that Seymour claimed to have seen Elizabeth cast her arms about a man's neck in an embrace, but no one else in the household had seen it, and Ashley came to believe that Katherine had made it up to get her to spy on Elizabeth and Seymour. Katherine and Seymour moved to his London house for several months, and Elizabeth did not go with them. When in spring 1548, she arrived to join them, he started up his morning visits again. Kat Ashley says she again reprimanded him for coming in a state of undress into a maiden's chamber. In June 1548, Katherine wrote to Seymour, and asked Elizabeth to arrange a messenger to get the letter to him. Elizabeth wrote on the outside of the letter, in Latin, "Thou touch me not," then deleted it, and wrote instead, "Let him not touch me," suggesting his advances were unwanted, but that she feared to speak too directly to him about it. Kat Ashley said, however, that Elizabeth did bear some affection towards Seymour and would blush when he was spoken of. Finally, on the 11th of June 1548, according to Thomas Parry, Katherine came across her husband and stepdaughter embracing in a room alone together, and Katherine reacted with anger. They were all alone, he having her in his arms, wherefore the Queen fell out with Seymour and Elizabeth. The very next day, Elizabeth went to live with Sir Anthony and Joan Denny, Cat Ashley's sister, at Cheshunt in Hertfordshire, and Katherine and Seymour went to Sudeley Castle. It is not clear whether Elizabeth chose to leave or was sent away. Throughout that summer, Elizabeth was ill with migraines, jaundice, digestive problems, and irregular menstruation. About 60 years later, an urban legend started to circulate that Elizabeth had been pregnant during this time, but the evidence is laughably slender and easily refuted. It seems more likely that Elizabeth was stressed and traumatized by the separation from her stepmother and the sexual harassment by her stepfather. Katherine wrote Elizabeth affectionate letters while they were apart. On the 5th of September 1548, a week after giving birth, Katherine died. There had been no reconciliation in person between Katherine and Elizabeth since the events in June.